for Bring Your Own Lunch. Personal stories about the business with my daddy, Dave T. Koenig.
All right, come on in. Have a seat. Welcome. This is the Bring Your Own Lunch podcast at bringyourownlunch.com, the magic of iTunes, the majesty of Stitcher. And however you found your way to download this podcast, I thank you. As you heard at the top, my name is Dave T. Koenig. I'm an actor, writer, director, producer, comedian, all-around swell dude. I am inoculated against the influenza virus. And of course, I'm the host of the podcast you're listening to right now. BYOL is the hashtag you can use if you want to hop on social media. Like us on Facebook.com/BringYourOwnLunch. You can follow us on Twitter at BYOL Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Bring Your Own Lunch. And if you want a traditional route, such as websites can be traditional, you can go to our website, the mothership, if you will, bringyourownlunch.com. You'll find out all the information about the guests on this program, past, present, and presumably future. And, of course, you can always send me an email, dave@bringyourownlunch.com, and there's nothing I like more than getting a personal email sent to me, unless you're a bill collector. You know, one of the hardest things to do in this business of entertainment is simply survive. The burnout rate in this industry is huge. Whether you're a performer or a director or any kind of artist, singular, or if you are a theater company. And in New York City, where the climate has changed so dramatically, so rapidly compared to how things were 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, a production company, a theater company, it has a really hard time surviving. But my guest this week is the founder and artistic director of Retro Productions, a company that has been at it for more than 10 years, producing things on a very independent level, often on a shoestring budget, and through craftiness and creativeness and savvy, they managed to keep going. And Heather Cunningham is the rock that sits at the foundation of that theater company, and she's got a great story to tell. If you have any aspirations of starting something on your own that goes beyond yourself, I mean, if you're in the entertainment business, you probably are already starting your career and you're focused on that. But if you have any interest in starting something like a theater company or a production company, and you want to get some ideas about how that's even possible, this is the podcast for you. Heather has tremendous experience in producing in New York City and dealing with the ins and outs of all the details that go into any production on the stage or otherwise, and she has been trained to do it, partially through osmosis, living with two parents who are incredibly bright and incredibly experienced in production. Her father, Jack, and her mother, Rebecca, both academics, professors at Brooklyn College, and it was growing up in that household where she really truly learned the basics of what she would do, and it was reinforced in college and later in her first job working for a theater company in Pennsylvania, and all of that stuff you'll see funnels into what she's doing now with Retro Productions, and it's a great story. I met Heather when I did a play called When You Coming Back, Red Rider. That was written by Mark Meadoff and directed by my friend Rick Seacrest, who's one of my favorite people in the business. It was 2009, and I came in to play a character named Clark, which was a fun part, and it was sort of my reintroduction to the theater and in certain ways the business after my daughter was born. I had taken some time off, taking my focus off of acting, but a year into things, I was able to jump back into a play, and it was great because not only was Rick great, Heather was great, and everybody I got to work with was awesome, and it was one of my favorite productions ever, and it's gotten such great write-ups, or it got such great write-ups at the time, and you can see all of that. I'll give you the link to the website for Retro Productions in just a little bit. But it was a pleasure to work on that. It was a pleasure to work with Heather. It was a pleasure to know that in some small way I was a contributor to what is Retro Productions, and they are a special group. And I ended up working with Heather again on a little project called 16 Actors Actoring, which I put together with a couple of people. It was a parody of the original 14 Actors Acting that the New York Times did several years ago. I think it was 2010 or something like that. And we made our own version of it, and Heather was one of the people who helped us out with that, along with some other people who were involved in Retro Productions. And it was a fun thing. And again, links on the website in the show notes for this episode. But listen to Heather's story, maybe take some notes, check it out, and then investigate retro productions on your own because there's a lot to learn from them. Want to say congratulations and throw some shout-outs to some people, some guests of this program who are doing very, very well. I like to do this from time to time, and this is a good time to do it because John Tague, who was my guest in Bring Your Own Lunch 55, his web series, The Rolling Soldier, is an official selection of both the Dublin, Ireland Dub Web Fest and the New York City Web Fest. Though both of those will be in November. He talked a lot about that web series when he was the guest on this show, and it's great to hear that that thing is moving forward. Camilla Wright, the guest in BYOL 47, she just performed in the ABC Talent Showcase this week. That's one of the biggest talent showcases in the business. So it's a big deal. And Camilla, one of my favorite people in the business as well. And if you go back and listen to her episode, she's got some great tips for actors specifically. Brian Och, my old friend, he was my guest for a two-parter, 40 and 41. He was the closing speaker at the first annual PIX 2015 conference in Seattle, Washington. Brian, in addition to being an actor, is a fantastic photographer, so he gave a speech about getting the right shot and told some stories about working with Prince. But if you go back and listen to Bring Your Own Lunch, those two episodes have the best stories about Brian's experience working with the one and only Prince. So go check those out. Gardner Comfort, he was my guest in episode 39. He wrote a play called The Elephant in Every Room I Enter. It's a solo show about his experiences dealing with Tourette syndrome. That'll have its world premiere at La Mama in New York City. That's October 15th through the 31st. There'll be information, again, on the website in the show notes for this episode. But go back and listen to the conversation I had with him. And we do talk about his Tourette syndrome. And it's one of my favorite conversations I've had about a subject that I knew very, very little about. And he was very cool in opening up to me about that. And last but not least, certainly not, Sean Kennan. He was my guest way back in episodes 4 and 5. We did a two-parter because he's a voice actor and an actor. He also owns his own recording studio. Well, we kind of hinted that he might show up on a big show, but we couldn't talk about it forever. But now we finally can. He made his debut on Family Guy on Fox this past Sunday, playing Tiny Tom Cruise. So if you saw the episode, you know that was hilarious, and I'm super happy for Sean, and I knew he was really excited about that, and it's so cool to see it finally happen. And he was a big part of that episode, and I mean, he's playing Tom Cruise. I mean, geez. Come on. Quagmire. All right, before we get into the interview, let's thank Banuba, banuba.net, BANOOBA.net. That's the band that plays the music you hear at the beginning, middle, and end of this show. They are awesome. Go to their website, buy their music, download their music, go see them live, and if you do happen to go and find them and talk to them, make sure you tell them Dave says hi and thank you. And if you have a moment and you want to support Bring Your Own Lunch, you could do one simple thing. Go to iTunes or Stitcher, your choice, and rate, review, and subscribe to this show. For you, if you rate and review, it's always nice to say nice things to other people. Karma is a real thing in my mind. And by subscribing, you're going to get these episodes as soon as they come out. You don't have to wait for any kind of announcement to that effect. It'll just come straight to your iPhone or your iTunes or whatever Stitcher does. And you'll have it, but you'll be helping us because by giving a positive review, giving lots of stars in the rating system, by subscribing, you're telling iTunes and Stitcher that we're doing good and that they should tell other people that we're doing good. So if you want to do something good for someone else today, you might want to choose Bring Your Own Lunch. And it's free, so just remember that part of it. All right, let's get into it with Heather Cunningham, New York native, Brooklynite, founder, artistic director, actor, creative force, Retro Productions. This is a good one. Here's Heather. Enjoy. Buildings don't seem to use common sense when they decide whether or not to turn on the heat.
It's so true. It has nothing to do with the weather. It has everything to do with the day of the month.
Yes, exactly. And it's brainless.
It's pretty rough. I mean, I live in an apartment building, and it gets pretty rough sometimes.
Yeah.
It gets too hot. It gets too cold. We don't have central air, but you get cold because the heat isn't on.
Right.
It needs to be.
And then when you want it to be cool, The heat is on.
Inevitably, yes.
But you're kind of, I'm guessing you're kind of used to it because you're a city girl.
I am.
Yeah.
Born and bred.
You were born in?
Brooklyn.
You were born in Brooklyn, okay.
Brooklyn in the house.
Brooklyn in the house, because you're the least Brooklyn-ese person who's ever come from Brooklyn, I think.
It's possibly true, yes. My parents are from the South. That might be why.
Your parents are fascinating, and I do want to talk to them. And not talk to them, although I enjoy talking to them when I had a chance. I want to talk about them in a little bit. But for you, so you were born in Brooklyn. What part of Brooklyn?
Born in, I was born in Long Island College Hospital, so downtown Brooklyn.
Okay.
But when we lived in a couple of different apartments sort of down in that area until I was 3 when my parents bought a house in Ditmas Park.
Okay. So do you remember the days before owning the house?
I remember some aspects of one of the apartments, the last apartment we lived in, but mostly no.
Wow, that's interesting. And when you say you bought a house in Brooklyn, standalone house or a brownstone? Or?
My parents live in a Queen Anne style house, which is
really old?
1906, I think.
That's pretty cool.
If I remember correctly. Yeah, it's about 90 years old. Or no, sorry, it's 2015. Jeez, it's over 100 years old.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful house. Ditmas Park has, there's an area of Ditmas Park that's a historic landmarks area. And they're mostly Queen Anne and some Victorian, but mostly Queen Anne style homes. They're standalone, yards in the front and back, garages, the whole bit.
That's really nice to have that sort of combination of real city life and that sort of suburban feel to it, which is kind of unique, although there are pockets around the city like that.
Someone once remarked that sitting on the porch at my parents' house made them feel like they were in Ohio.
Interesting. And you don't get that a lot in Brooklyn.
No.
No, like in Sunset Park, you're not going to feel like you're in the middle of Akron. Yeah.
Right.
So for you, do you feel that you were a city kid or did you feel like a suburban kid?
Oh, no, I definitely felt like a city kid.
What made it feel more? Because obviously walking out onto your porch, you got Ohio, but what would it take how far do you have to walk for it to become city?
A couple blocks. Blocks. When we first moved to Ditmas Park, it wasn't the neighborhood it is now.
And how would you describe it now? Let's start there.
Well, now the homes are all worth millions of dollars and it's a real estate kind of haven where real estate brokers like to say things are Ditmas Park that aren't actually Ditmas Park because it's a desirable neighborhood now.
Yeah. When
my parents bought the house, it was pre-landmarks. There were a lot of houses that were in bad shape.
Okay.
Including the one that they purchased was a fixer-upper. It wasn't in terrible shape, but it needed work.
Yeah.
It was the 70s. And it was New York in the 70s. So, if you walked a few blocks too far in the wrong direction, you got into some really shady spots.
Yeah.
And when I say I felt like a city kid, I took the subway to school starting in 7th grade.
Okay.
And I was in the city every Saturday and hanging out in the Village. And
that was when the Village was the Village.
In the 80s when, I mean, I have some very hilarious memories of, hanging out in the Village and the punk rockers and and kind of like going shopping with friends. And, there was this one particular place, it was on 8th Street back in the day that had this guy, he was like the Liberty spiked mohawk that was blue, and he was the security guy at the front door of the clothing store. It was like this punk clothing store, and we would go in there every weekend. And I had this one friend in high school who one day, I don't know what she was thinking, but as we were leaving the store, she looks at him, she's dead in the eye, and she goes, "Poser."
Wow.
Which is the worst thing you can say to a punk rocker.
Oh, that's like,
And she took off, and he raced after her down the street. And I was like, what did you do?
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, and hanging out in Washington Square Park in the 80s was like a totally different thing than it is walking through it now. I mean, at NYU was not nearly so pervasive as it is now.
Yeah, well, now it keeps growing and growing and growing, and pretty soon.
I can't walk down St. Mark's Place anymore because I don't recognize it anymore.
It has become so different. And... I'm okay with things changing on some level because it's progress. It's things are meant to evolve, and that's okay. But when so much character leaves, you feel it. you can't help but feel it. And St. Mark's Place right now is turning into pretty much any other block in New York City.
Yeah.
And every other block in New York City is kind of turning into St. Mark's Place.
Except that what's worse about most blocks in New York City that at least hasn't happened yet to St. Mark's Place, but it's just a matter of time, is that almost every other block of New York City has turned into a strip mall of glass boxes. And at least St. Mark's still retains some of its old architecture.
That is true. No, you're definitely right about that.
It's the thing that makes me saddest about what it. Not to go on a rant.
No, go ahead.
Not to go on a Jeremiah's Vanishing New York style rant. But, the thing that this is my hometown. I never want to live anywhere else. I have lived other places. I don't want to leave. I will be here probably till the day I die. But I miss New York the way it was in the 70s and 80s. And yes, no, I don't miss the dirt and I don't miss the crime, but I do miss mom and pops. Mm-hmm. Businesses that, there used to be thrift stores and places you could go and find cool stuff that was cheap. And, now everything's H&M.
Yeah.
It makes me so depressed. And it's just not the same. The last two holdouts that I remember on St. Mark's Place are closing, which are Sounds and Trash and Vaudeville.
Oh, wow.
And, if Trash and Vaudeville's been there since
forever,
before I can remember.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's and it was expensive in the 80s. So I can only imagine what the prices are like now. Or it was expensive to me as a teenager in the 80s. I should be specific,
right.
But I used to go there and I used to try things on and never buy anything. If they can't make it, I don't know. I don't think I've hung out on St. Mark's Place since Manic Panic closed, and that's a long time ago.
Yeah, and we're past the point of hanging out on St. Mark's Place.
Yes, I'm too old for that.
I didn't mean to age you like that, but
I did that to myself when I mentioned New York in the 70s. I think people are starting to do the math.
Yeah, that's true. Do people do math anymore?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do they?
But what I can say is that when I go there, I'm comforted by the funky, cool food places that do pop up in that strip, but I see them come and then they're gone.
And then Chipotle takes over.
I'm not anti-corporate in that to that degree where I want to jeopardize any potential advertising for this podcast. But yeah, I want to see those unique places. I want to see those random single location food places that are so great. And if you don't get the opportunity to go to those places, a sense of culture goes with it. And that's a shame.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for you said you didn't start taking the subway to do school until you were in high school. But so elementary school was just standard PS kind of thing?
Yeah, I went to PS 139 until 6th grade. And then in 7th grade, I started taking the subway to my parents sent me to a private prep school out of partially because of the academics, but partially out of fear because there was a lot of rumors about my the junior high that I was zoned to.
Okay,
had a bad reputation for violence, and
that's what a lot of schools in New York City had at the time.
Absolutely,
yeah.
I went to a great public school until 6th grade. It was 139 was a great school. I don't know if it still is, but it was at the time.
Right. And the school system has changed so much. So you weren't applying to high schools, right? You weren't going through that process, right? No, I didn't have to do all that. No, but I applied. I took some tests at the end of 6th grade, and I applied to 4 prep schools, and it was like. I was given a choice. I was allowed to make a choice between those 4 prep schools. I didn't really want to go to any of them. Right.
None of them were at the top of my list, but I did. But I did choose one, and I ended up going to the Berkeley Carroll School, which at the time was called the Berkeley Carroll Street School. But by the time I graduated from high school, it was called the Berkeley Carroll School. They dropped the street. One of my classmates went on a mission because she thought it made the school sound cheesy.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
and they, you know what? She succeeded. They got them to drop the street from the name of the school.
That's a pretty significant change.
It is. It really is. So yeah, and it was a small school, and not many people in New York City have the experience of being one of 12 graduating seniors. But I can honestly say I was in the top 10 of my class.
Hey, now, yeah, you nailed it. Screw
there
you
was
two other kids, yeah.
Good about it. And so I took the subway to school and home.
Right. And how far was that?
That was, so I grew up in Divis Park, and the school was in Park Slope, so not that far.
Not that far. It wasn't like other people I've talked to who
20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, lived in the Bronx, went to school, Lower Manhattan kind of thing.
No.
And that's what a lot of kids are doing that now because of the way they arrange the school system. So
it's completely different.
Your public high school isn't your local school. Right. So you had the experience where you would have gone to a local school.
Right.
But
I would have been able to walk.
Right. But because of the situation with that particular public school, you didn't want to go there, so you had to really try to go to a different school. Nowadays, it's like, if you want to go to your local school and your local school is good, you have to get in there, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
That's very strange.
It's a little, and I don't have children, so I don't know the entirety of what that's like. But I have friends who have kids who have had to go through it, and it is very stressful, I have gathered.
Yeah, no, I know nothing about that because I live in the burbs, and you go to your local school, and that's all there is to it. And that's how it was for me growing up on Long Island. You just went to the school that was in your town, unless you chose to go somewhere else and pay for it a lot. So what was your the Berkeley Carroll School? What was what was the gist of what they did there? It's a college prep. Mm-hmm. That's really like the academic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But there was a theater program, and I would have been miserable had there not been one.
Especially now we can talk about your family, because it's you were sort of you were trained at home for the business in a way, right?
A little bit, yeah.
So tell me about your parents, because they're like I said, they're fascinating people, and nobody can talk about them better than you could. So tell me about your parents.
My parents are both theater designers. My mother is a costume designer. She is also an academic. So she was a professor, emeritus now. She was a professor for many, many years at Brooklyn College in the theater department there. She is the author of the leading undergraduate textbook in costume design.
And her name, by the way, is
Rebecca Cunningham.
Rebecca Cunningham, which is very similar to your name.
Heather Cunningham.
Which, well, obviously the Cunningham. So you can name drop, and yes.
And she also wrote a workshop, or a workbook rather, for basic sewing for construction of costumes. And those books are doing very well and very popular. And actually, the textbook, which she wrote first, came out the year I graduated from high school. And much to my chagrin, my high school thought that was the most impressive thing, and that my mother needed to be the speaker at my graduation, which was totally embarrassing to an 18-year-old Heather Cunningham.
As well,
at the time.
But you were lost in the crowd of 12, so
I know. Yeah.
Nobody was looking, to tell it was you.
My father, also a designer. Both of my parents came to New York for study. My mother came to go to FIT originally, ended up at Brooklyn College and got her master's, and ended up in costume design. She thought she was going to be in fashion, ended up in costume design. My father came to New York to go to Brooklyn College for his master's in set design. And he's kind of the reason my mother ended up in costumes. From what I've gathered, I think the story goes that two of the professors were in the front seat of the car. They were giving him a ride somewhere, and they were talking about a show they were getting ready to do. And they were saying that the costumes needed to be high fashion, and they needed to find someone to design these costumes that knew about the fashion industry. And my father spoke up from the back seat and said, "My wife can do it." And that is, as they say, all she wrote. But my mother, not only did she get her degree, master's at Brooklyn College, she stayed, and eventually, she worked in the shop, and then she eventually became a professor herself, and didn't really ever leave until she finally retired. And when she did retire, they named the costume shop after her.
That is awesome.
And I am no longer embarrassed by my mother, by the way.
Yay.
I'm extremely proud of my mother.
That's awesome.
I'm also very proud of my father. My father, in addition to being a set designer, for a brief time was a director when I was very young. I have vague memories of him directing way back in the day at Soho Rep.
Oh, wow.
And now that he's retired, he left the theater and when they bought a house and got a real job, and he worked in publishing for a long time. But every now and then I would, like slowly pull him back in. I got him to agree to design a set for my high school at one point, and then after I graduated college, I was at a theater company in Pennsylvania, and I somehow convinced him that he needed to design a set for that company.
Oh, wow.
And they ended up designing some scenery there. But now that he's retired, in addition to occasionally designing scenery for my company, he is also turned playwright. And his play Women in War, which we did the world premiere of, is now published by Sam French and is very popular.
That's fantastic.
Particularly among high schools, I think, but across the country in regional areas.
That's great.
It's really
and he's Jack Cunningham, right?
Yeah. Jack Hilton Cunningham.
Jack Hilton Cunningham.
Yes.
Well, I was going to say.
He uses the middle name.
Well, you got to have a middle something in there.
Well,
yeah, just ask me.
And unfortunately, Hilton were not related to the Hiltons.
But you are related to the Cunninghams, and that's a great foundation for you.
The money of the Hilton family wouldn't be so bad.
And I don't think anybody would turn it down.
I'm just saying.
But who you have to hang around with, maybe that's not so great.
Right. Well,
so it gave you a tremendous, through osmosis, you had to have learned a great deal.
Yes.
Growing up with them.
I like to tell them it's nobody's fault but their own.
So you did some theater at the high school you went to, Berkeley Carroll. Mm-hmm. What level would you say was their program? Was it like all the time, or was it seasonal shows? What kind of stuff?
2 shows a year. There were always classes to take. I didn't just take acting classes. I was in the chorus the whole time I was there. And, I took some visual art as well. There was a great variety of things. My senior year, we had a class called Drama and Society, which, looking back on it, was probably more influential than I would ever like to admit, because that little punk rocker in me doesn't want to admit that I got something out of high school. But it was a senior class that I took that was this sort of idea behind the class was we would read a play and we would talk about the influences of society of the time when the play was written on the play. I think A Doll's House was probably one of the plays that we did. And I remember specifically reading Tea and Sympathy, which, if you're not familiar with it, was written in the 50s or early 50s. And it takes place at a boys' school. And the main characters are really the wife of one of the teachers, and they are the sort of, it takes place in the dormitory, and they are sort of the dorm couple, they're like, she's like the dorm mother.
Yeah.
And then there are the boys who go to the school, and there's sort of all this sort of question about the boy's sexuality, and the boys tease him because they think he's gay, except that they don't actually come out and say that he's gay because it's the 1950s.
Yeah, right.
and then but really what it is that he has this incredibly massive crush on this woman.
Wow.
And it's got a very famous last line. She takes his hand. He's struggling because he doesn't really understand his feelings, but she starts to recognize them, and she takes his hand, places it on her breast, and she says, "When you talk about this, and you will, please be kind." Oh, I might be paraphrasing, but it's something like that. Yeah. And that was, I remember sort of even in 1988 or 89 when I was taking this class, kind of having this conversation with the teacher and the other people in the class about, why would the other boys think he's gay because of the way he stands? There's like a lot of description in the play about the way he stands with his hands on his hips.
Okay, yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
It was sort of really kind of eye-opening to me about at that point. Although I don't think I really made a lot of the connections till much later. Well, I imagine it's sort of become what I do.
Yeah. I wonder how much the fact that you went to what was a really small school, even though you were in this big city, your peers were, the number of peers you had was limited during a very important developmental time. I wonder how much that had an influence on your understanding of those kind of issues if you weren't exposed to 100 people in your graduating class or 1,000 people in your graduating class. So what do you think? I mean,
it's because it was such a small school and because it was not an inexpensive school. I was there on scholarship, and I wouldn't have been there had I not been. But there were a lot of kids who were privileged, and so I had a reaction to that, which came out in my wardrobe and my musical tastes, and the way I did my hair. And
so you were rebellious even with 11 other kids.
Absolutely. I recently reconnected on Facebook with a friend that I made, not in high school, but at the time when I was in high school. We had taken acting classes together at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts on Saturday mornings, and we became very good friends. And she was from Staten Island, and she was someone who I thought was really cool. Like I don't know anybody that's this cool. And she said to me we were chatting on Facebook, IMing and just sort of reconnecting and everything. And she's like, she said to me, "You were the most punk rock person I knew. I couldn't believe you were even talking to me." And I thought, really? Because I always felt like a poser. I always felt like I was born a little too late, and I knew people who were more punk than I was. Not in school, but sort of out in the world.
Right.
I had my best friend from second grade. Her older sister was the lead singer of a punk band, and she was the most punk person.
Sure.
She was. Yeah. And continues to be in her own way incredibly punk. And I still look up to her. She's still to me, she's a very impressive person. But yeah, I couldn't believe that she said that to me. And I thought, I guess there's a good chance that people I went to high school with thought that too on some level. And it's funny because I went to like a reunion at one point a couple of years ago around the time we did our show together, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And someone said to me something about how I was always on the cutting edge of music.
Interesting.
And I thought that was hilarious because I don't listen to pop music at all anymore. I don't know what's happening on the radio.
Right.
If there's a popular song that everybody's singing, the chances are that unless it's on a commercial on television, I have not heard of it. I don't know who. I
totally know the feeling. Yeah.
I was visiting my best friend in Virginia a couple weeks ago, and she said, "I have a crush on Ed Sheeran." And I was like, "Who is Ed Sheeran?" And apparently he's like the new big thing.
He's big.
Yeah. He's huge. But I was I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, if he came up and hit you in the head with a bowling pin, you wouldn't know who it was.
Yeah. Couldn't say.
Yeah. So it's interesting how our perspectives changed that dramatically.
I mean, as I get older musically, I'm more interested in older music. But even in high school, although I was not as punk rock as I wanted to be, I was really more new wave.
Yes.
I was new wave goth with an interest in punk. But
all that was happening around that time.
And punk was a little bit over by the time I was discovering it. So people thought of me as punk, but I wasn't really punk.
Because we didn't know what to call it yet. All the nomenclature wasn't established.
And so like even in 1989, I was listening to music that I was still finding the music that came out in 1980. And part of that is I'm an only child, and I was raised on show tunes.
Yes, so
sure. I didn't know popular music. Really, Thriller coming out was like the turning point for me knowing what popular music was.
Yeah.
Up until that point, I didn't have a clue.
Really interesting. And it does kind of like clue us into what you are doing with your theater company. But I don't want to skip where did you go after high school?
Denison University.
Why Denison? And Denison is where?
It's in Ohio.
Ohio, okay.
I desperately wanted to go to
because it reminded you of home, obviously.
Yeah, no, that's actually, but so I wanted to go to a conservatory, and the headmistress of my prep school said absolutely not. She let me apply to a few, but she was like not happy with the idea. She was also my college counselor. And so I had to find some non-conservatory programs, and one of the ones I found was Denison has at the time, I'm told they no longer have it, but they had a BFA program at the time.
Okay.
And some of us who graduated from Denison with a BFA would really like to see them reinstate the BFA for a lot of reasons. But the reason I found out about Denison was because my next door neighbor at the time, actually across the street, neighbor at the time who I babysat for, she had a little baby, and she worked for Jim Henson.
Oh, okay.
And she got the job at Jim Henson because of having gone to Denison.
Interesting.
And she had been a technical theater major at Denison, and she suggested I look into it. And that's sort of how I found Denison. And then I sent an application and a video. I'm sure it was a very cheesy videotape, of some of my high school work. I'm rolling my eyes as I say that.
You can kind of hear it in your voice. So,
and they actually, I'll never forget it. I used to have to get up really early for high school, and I don't know why I was getting up at 5 or 5:30 in the morning or something crazy early. So I don't remember why, but I had to get up really early, and so I would go to bed fairly early. I remember that it was like a Wednesday night or something, and the phone rang, and I was already in bed, and my mother came in and woke me up, and she said, "It's the head of the theater department from Denison University. He wants to talk to you."
Oh, wow.
And so I got on the phone, and I was groggy as anything, and he's like, "Were you asleep?" He's like, "You won't be sleeping at this hour when you get to college." I'll never forget that. And of course, and so he talked to me for a little while, and he said, "We'd like you to come out this weekend and visit the school." And so I told my mom what he said. And she said, "Well, you're going."
All right.
She really wanted me to go someplace where I was going to get good academics. That was always important to her.
Sure.
High school, college, whatever.
Yeah.
She's an academic herself. It's not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
And so I flew out Saturday morning. I had a birthday party I really wanted to go to on Friday night. I was like, I want to go to this birthday party. I don't even remember whose it was anymore. But I knew I had a birthday party Friday night. And Saturday morning I got up really early, went and I flew to Columbus. And so I guess somebody must have picked me up in the airport and drove me out to the university, which is about a half hour from Columbus. And they were doing 2 shows in repertory. They were doing Miss Alliance and Midsummer Night's Dream. Mm-hmm. I can't remember which one was. I think Midsummer was the matinee. They got me. It was me and another prospective student who was a potential set design student. Mm-hmm. And they gave us tickets. We saw the show, and then they had. I remember I had an interview with the head of the department, Dr. John Ferris. And then he handed. I'll never forget this either. This is a very memorable moment. He called over a student. Who we affectionately called Scooter. That was his nickname. His name was Scott. And he handed him his credit card and he said, "Take them to the Buxton Inn," which was like this really she kind of place in town, right? And so we went to the Buxton Inn and we had dinner, and then they came back and we saw Miss Alliance. And I got a girl crush on the woman who played the pilot. She was amazing. And then they took me, and here's where it clinched it for me. They took me to a party at the home of one of the professors. It was the department was theater and cinema, and this was a cinema professor, but he was throwing like a big cast party for both casts in his home. And there was a rather large plastic tumbler in my hand the entire time, which was never empty, no matter how much I drank, with rum and Diet Coke.
That's enough to get you.
And I was like, I want to go to school here. This is the coolest thing ever, And my mother was, it wasn't for years till I told my mother that that's what had happened, and she was rather appalled that that's why I chose Denison. But that is actually why I chose Denison.
Well, the sum total of what you're describing sounds
it's pretty fantastic.
Like a pretty good, alluring thing. They invited you out. They gave you tickets. They gave you food. They really gave you
wined
booze.
And dined me.
Sure. I mean, everybody, to this day, I don't think I've ever been wined and dined quite like that.
It was lovely. The guy that was the set design student didn't end up going. I don't remember really much about him at all. But I ended up there, and you know how a lot of people think of high school as the best years of their life. For me, it's college. I really I loved it there. I loved the school. I loved the people. I mean, there were not only good times. There were certainly some times that I could take back, but that was kind of my. I got to do so much theater, and I got to experience like all of the sort of aspects, that was part of the program, was you did a little bit of everything. And I just got to do so many shows, and I loved it. And it's,
when you went there, what was your career goal, or did you have a career goal? Did you know what you wanted?
Well, I always knew I wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
That was never a question in my mind, but I can honestly say I only ever wanted to be in the theater. It wasn't, some people want to be an actor and they want to be in the movies, and that's their goal. And that's what they do. And that's nothing wrong with that. It's just, mine was the opposite. I just want to do theater. Like my big pie in the sky dream is to be on Broadway. That's the ultimate.
And that's sort of where you've kept yourself moving, because obviously you are now heavily involved, and it sounds like a lot of the experience you had at Denison kind of prepped you for what you would end up doing.
Yeah, and actually the very first professional gig I got outside of school when I graduated was at a theater called Hedgerow Theater in Pennsylvania, where they hired actors and you became part of a company that ran the company. And so I was there for a little over, I think it was around a year and a half that I was there total as a resident company member. And I was the costume shop manager. And I would do a little bit of, I'm not really a costume designer, but I did a little work on costumes for shows. I did box office shifts. I cooked for the company once a week, dinner. Not everybody did that. I think only the people who actually knew how to cook.
They didn't want to burn the place down.
Yeah, exactly. We all lived together in a farmhouse.
Oh, wow. It was a real commune.
It was a real theater commune. And my mother looked the other way in a couple of points. But yeah, I produced a festival of contemporary one acts while I was there, and I did shows, and we all took classes together, and it was those sort of, and the day to day at that time, I don't know what it's like there now. I think they might be structured slightly differently now. I don't think they call it resident company anymore, and I don't know exactly what, but it was totally non-equity, and so we got away with a lot of this stuff. But 8:50 a.m. we had a company meeting till 9 to 10 we had a company work hour, which was usually groundwork, working the grounds or cleaning the theater or whatever it was. It was different every day. From 10 to 12 you worked in whatever your particular job was. So for me it was the costume shop. From 12 to 1 there was a lunch, which was sort of fend for yourself, whatever was in the kitchen. From 1 to 4 was a second work shift, and you either worked in your thing, or if like I did it, I would do a box office shift a couple times a week, so I might be in the box office. And then 4 to 5 was supposed to be line time, where you could sit and we had to fight for that, because that wasn't actually originally in the schedule as I remember it. And at some point we were all like, we need time to study our lines.
Oh yeah, well, sure, yeah.
So we got 4 to 5 for that, and then 5 to 6 was dinner. And then, usually it was a 7 o'clock call for an 8 o'clock show.
Wow.
If you were rehearsing, if you were in the show in the evening.
Yeah.
If you were rehearsing a show, it might be in the afternoon rehearsal, or it might be an evening rehearsal starting at 7 o'clock in the big room. And that was 6 days a week. You got 1 day off, usually Mondays. And when you were in tech, you didn't get Monday off. Because when you're in tech, and there was no day off. It was intense. Yeah. 24/7. We worked hard, we partied hard, but we were living theater, and it was in so many ways exactly what I wanted, until I started to realize how miserable I was in a house that was falling apart.
Yeah.
And I felt like not everybody was pulling their weight. And, it was really hard to have, housemates, not roommates, because my roommate was fantastic and we're still friends to this day, but housemates who didn't always, have the same, like, sleep needs or sound need, I needed a certain amount of quiet or whatever.
I mean, it's hard to find one person you can tolerate living with.
But then to live with 12 to 15, other artists can get really hard.
Yeah.
And I wasn't very good at the living part of that.
I can imagine.
Living in a house part of that.
That's the part I would have a hard time with.
That eventually I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore.
But
when
that
I did that, and the schedule was crazy, but I didn't mind the schedule. It was really about my being able to live in the house. And so what I ended up doing was I got an apartment nearby with another friend, and I had been cast in a bunch of shows coming up, and I was like, I'll stick to my commitments in the shows, and I got a day job, and I did this theater at night, and I had an apartment nearby. And that was like sort of how I gracefully
extracted
from that. But when I look back, I don't look back on it and feel misery for the place at all. Like I actually,
I'm sure you learned a ton.
Pretty fond of some of those memories and some of those people. When I think back about it, and then I ended up living in Philadelphia for a year, which was really such a lovely city, and I really liked it. And if I could have figured out how to get into auditions in Philadelphia for Philadelphia theater companies, I would have stayed probably longer. But that year was me trying to figure that out and not figuring it out, not being able to learn the people who I needed to meet and how the business works in that town, and not having a job and needing to make some money. And I ended up deciding to just live rent free for a little while.
No shame in that.
And my parents are in Brooklyn, so
that's a good setup.
That's a pretty good setup.
That's a darn good setup.
That's what I did. And I actually ended up the year after I moved back from Philadelphia, I ended up on the road for a year with a couple of different companies doing touring shows.
Very cool.
So yeah. But a lot of what I learned, a lot of it came from Denison, of course, but a lot of it came from Hedgerow.
I'm sure.
I learned a lot at Hedgerow.
As you mentioned it sort of struck me the way a Japanese martial arts dojo works, where if you want to learn all these techniques, you'll get up and you'll scrub the mats. Like if you were a prospective sumo wrestler, let's say, you'll get up and you'll scrub the mats, and then you'll do work around the dojo, and then you'll do your sumo training, and then you'll cook the food for the older sumo wrestlers, and then you'll do more training, and then you'll go to bed. And you do that every day. And what comes out of that is a potential champion, and that's really what you went through. It's fascinating.
It was a lot like what I always imagined summer stock in the 60s was like, too.
I guess.
I don't actually know. I've never done summer stock at all. But the difference being that this wasn't just in the summer.
Right. And it was year-round. Yeah. It was your life for a year and a half. Really that's great. All right. So let's talk about retro.
Okay.
Because I think that's your focus for sure. And it ties in a lot of what you've already laid out about your past, and it's easy to see the threads coming together. When did retro production start?
A little more than 10 years ago.
Wow. And one thing I always say about retro, and just knowing the history of it, and I've done one show with you, and that was a few years ago, so I already had this feeling, is that it's impressive just to have more than one show under your belt as a production company. But the idea that you stayed around for 10 plus years is a massive achievement in New York City. So what was the start? Where did the genesis happen?
Something I was thinking about was, in general, someday it might be nice to be an artistic director. But it was always this sort of thing that was like way off in the distance, and really like, not something I was thinking about as in my youth, which I put little air quotes around because I'm clearly middle-aged. I had done a couple of shows back to back at the American Theater of Actors. Some of us have done some time there. I'm not saying you're one of us. I'm just saying some of us ended up there.
Sure.
I did 2 shows back to back with like 2 or 3 of the same people. We did these 2 things right back to back, and I don't think any of us ever went back. But there was one particular actor who one day during the second production that we were in together, he looked at me and he sighed. And he said, "I am tired of making other people's shit look good."
Wow.
And I went, ding!
Yeah.
Because not only was I tired of it too, I realized I could make my own shit look good.
Yeah.
And I could do it a hell of a lot better than what I was experiencing and in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so this idea was born. Now, it didn't actually fully form. It wasn't born fully formed. But it was something I started really thinking about more and more. And I did a show with another actress, and we were chatting, and we discovered a mutual love, childhood love of Nancy Drew. And we bonded a little bit over this, and we had this idea that it would be really fun to bring Nancy Drew to the stage. And I said, well, I'm Bess. There's no question. I'm pleasantly plump. All I need is a blonde wig, and I'm Bess. And she had very short brown hair, and she said, well, obviously I'm George. So we needed a Nancy, and actually she said, and I know our Nancy. I've got our Nancy. And so we started working on this idea that we would do a Nancy Drew stage show. We would adapt one of the books. Well, I got a playwright involved and a director involved, and I convinced my mother that she should design the costumes, and we were talking about what we wanted it to be, and we were talking about Nancy Drew in general and the history of Nancy Drew, and I said, well, I think we really need to do mid-century Nancy Drew because it was in the 1950s, and here's where I get really geeky. It was in the 1950s that Grosset and Dunlop started editing and republishing the books.
Oh, okay.
So the books pre-1950 have more chapters in them, and in some cases they retained the title and nothing else when they republished them. Pardon me. But in most cases they lost sometimes a minor storyline or a character, or sometimes they actually got more politically correct. Although for the 50s that's still pretty surprising.
Yeah.
But compared to the 30s.
Yeah.
You can imagine.
Different world.
So I was like, we got to do this 1950s and this and that. And we had all these wonderful ideas, and we applied for the Fringe Festival, and we got in. And we were so excited. And we were tracking down, we were doing all our due diligence, and we were tracking down, and Grosset and Dunlap gave us permission to do one of the books. We chose a book, we were going to do this. We got people so excited about this project, ourselves included. And we learned that the character rights, which are different from the rights to the book, are owned by Warner Brothers. So we hired a lawyer.
Oh, man.
To write a letter. And we spent a lot of money. Wow. And Warner Brothers was like, no, just no. Oh, my God. And so we had to let it all go. But
you couldn't rename the characters and say this is not Nancy Drew.
Well, we actually thought we didn't want to, but we thought about it, and we talked to the Fringe about it, and they said no. Well, they're like, you can do it, but you can't do it in the Fringe. And I don't really blame them, and it's not what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, of course not.
So it didn't really, So we had to let it go, but we had raised a bunch of money that hadn't been spent yet. So we decided to use that money to do a play to showcase ourselves. So we started reading plays. And we finally, I can't remember who found it. I feel like I'm the one who found it, but maybe I'm wrong. It doesn't matter, but we passed it all around. A play called Catholic Schoolgirls by Casey Curdy. And it's 4 females. And I was like, there's 3 of us here. We can each choose our part, and then we'll just find another actress. We used the same director we were going to use for Nancy Drew. And it takes place in the 1960s. And it's about these 4 girls. And they go to Catholic school, obviously. And it's sort of about the tumultuous 1960s and how it informs them as human beings and sort of how it shapes them into adults. A lot of stuff happened in the 1960s historically. I mean,
I've heard,
yeah,
couple things.
So it's a really wonderful little play, and we decided we would do that. And I said, we had called ourselves at that time River Heights Productions after Nancy Drew's hometown.
Oh, okay.
And we kept the name River Heights, but I said, let's write a mission statement and we'll make it look really official. And I wrote this mission of retro theater. I was like, this is great because if we ever do get the Nancy Drew rights, we can still do it because it'll be retro.
Right.
And so I wrote this mission statement, retro theater, 20th century period stuff. I was like, theater companies are a dime a dozen in New York. And actually, just having been at the League of Independent Theater thing last night where they did a grant lottery last night, and there were something like over 150 theater companies in this lottery for 5 grants.
Wow.
So I said, well, we got to do something that's going to make us stand out. We got to be specific. We got to choose. And so I chose retro theater, and I thought that it covers the Catholic schoolgirls, it covers Nancy Drew.
Sure.
Fine.
And retro is one of those terms you can apply to almost anything, and it applies.
Right.
Yeah.
It just sort of worked out, and so. So we did Catholic schoolgirls. We did 6 performances in 1 week at Chashama had a space. I don't know if they still have it on 42nd Street on the east side, between 2nd and 3rd Avenues, as a storefront.
Oh,
we did it in a storefront theater, and we did this huge sign for in the storefront. And we get a call one day from Casey Curdy, the playwright. She's like, I hear you're doing my play on 42nd Street. Can I come?
Oh, my. Well,
yeah, you can come.
Yeah, come on.
Of course you can come. How wonderful. We were very excited. It was so wonderful. She came. She was fantastic.
Nice that she asked, in fact.
And so it was a very exciting start. And I said, I want to keep, it was a little bit like, the Junkie's First Fix.
The bug.
Yeah. And so I said, I want to keep doing this. So we chose a second play. One of the 3 ladies, had to sort of bow out for health reasons. So it became just myself and one. And we did Mrs. California by Doris Baisley, which is, it's a modern play, but it takes place in the 50s, and it's about a homemaking contest.
That's not retro at all.
And it's a wonderful play. And again, Doris Baisley ended up in New York right when we were doing it. She came to see it, and we just it was, this fantastic. We had this great sort of, and then the other actress and I who had been doing it, we weren't really getting along. We weren't seeing eye to eye about what the company should be and where it should be going. And so we sort of split ways, and I said, well, I'm taking the production history and the mission statement with me. And she wouldn't let me keep the name.
Oh,
and
okay.
At first I was really upset about that. And then finally I was like, actually, I'm okay with that. And I changed the name of the company to Retro Productions.
And thus the official name of the company was born. Yeah.
And we've been Retro Productions ever since. And once I was sort of solely in charge, I started not just doing comedies, because those first 2 shows were comedies. The very next show we did was Still Life by Emily Mann, which is like the exact opposite of a comedy. and I started creating a company of actors and directors and designers and membership. When I say membership, it's not a paid membership. They don't have to pay to be in the company. It's more like they're members of the company and they help run the company. Yeah. Which is something that I kind of get from my days at Heather.
Sure, yeah. That all makes sense. Now, you mentioned your mission statement, and I know from having worked with you that your mission statement became clearer and more detailed. So what would you say the mission statement is now for Retro?
The 5-cent version of my mission statement, because I don't have it memorized.
And I don't have that much money, so.
Is that we do 20th century period work. We do retro theater. And the idea is that we, much like my drama and society class, we examine what makes something of its time. So we only do plays that cannot be moved from their time period for one reason or another. It may be historical content, like, one of the characters is, for example, in Still Life, the main character is a Vietnam vet.
Right. You can't really move that.
Can't change that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even the one I did, When You Coming Back, Red Rider, it was set along Route 66, right? Right.
I don't remember if it's specifically Route 66, but it's New Mexico.
Yeah, during the expansion of the highways.
In the 60s,
but you couldn't have set that in a world where there's 4 streets converging in this one diner and everyone has cell phones. It just wouldn't work. Right. So
and that character, not the character you played, but the character of Teddy, which is the main character in Red Rider. Also a Vietnam vet.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And that's an important part of his story.
Sure.
So sometimes it's historical content. Sometimes it's language. We just did The Butter and Egg Man last May, which is a 1920s comedy, George Kaufman. And you cannot set that in the present because the slang is so thickly 1920s and the way people talk. People don't talk that way today.
Right.
People don't say those words. They don't use those words to mean those things.
It'd be kind of like when they did Romeo and Juliet.
And little winky kind of like little comments that make you remember that this is prohibition.
Yeah, yeah.
Even though no one actually comes out and says, do you think you could get us some champagne? It's like, maybe get some champagne.
Exactly.
So everything we do is period work, and it's 20th century is our kind of because I'm not going to go past 1900.
Right.
And in fact, the earliest we've done is the teens. We have not actually done the aughts.
Wow.
But
that's still, it's a tremendous challenge, and even mining that material, because one thing about what you do, and it's interesting because a lot of people I talk to, when they have that bug, they'd say, "Oh, I'm tired of making other people's stuff look good. It's garbage look good, whatever, Mm-hmm. And they decide they're going to go write their own stuff.
Yeah.
But you have chosen, except with a couple of exceptions, maybe, to do pre-existing work. Yeah. But you have to go actually dig in and find these works.
I think a lot of that is too that these are plays that are maybe not specifically plays that I grew up with, but are in the style of things that I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of love. I'm sure there are people who think that stuff we do is totally cheesy, but I love it.
Right. And
actually, stylistically, I like to choose a variety of things. We've definitely done a lot of plays written post 1980. That take place in other, time periods.
Mm-hmm.
And newer plays have different style of writing than the Kaufman
Sure.
1925.
Yeah.
Like the next play we're doing, which was written 9 years ago or so. It takes place in the 1980s, but it's a very contemporary feel to the rhythms of the play and the way that the scenes kind of dovetail. I like to I like to do a variety of comedy and drama. I like to do a variety of time periods, and I like to, I like to think of the audience's experience, and they don't want the same thing over and over again, and neither do I.
Right,
I don't want it as an actor either. So when I go to look for this stuff, I keep a list. I keep a list of plays that I'm like, oh, I really like that. I'm going to put it on the list. It's not right for now, but maybe someday. Butter and Eggman was on that list for a really long time. And when I first read it, I wanted to do it, but there was no way that I could conceive of doing a show with, I think it was 14 actors or something.
Oh, wow.
It's
that's
like
big cast.
2 sets, and and then I decided, well, it was our 10th anniversary, and I decided to only do one show and to funnel everything into that one show and make that one show big and a party and an occasion, and that's what it ended up being. It was our 10th anniversary production, and I loved the idea of celebrating 10 years of producing theater with a play about producing theater. So there was that. But I was also, when I first read it 5 years ago, there was no way we could have produced it 5 years ago.
Right.
It's just, there was no resource. There was,
Sure.
There was no space. There was no money. There was no, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's the $1 million question. There have been, since you started Retro Productions, or in its earlier iteration, there have been, I'm going to guess here, 8 million theater companies that have started and subsequently disbanded in that time. What is your secret, or what are some of the secrets that you think go into allowing you to be here 10 years in and still really getting close to hitting your stride? Because it seems like you're not done. And it seems like there's a foundation there that's going to be really hard to crack. So what is it that has gotten you this far and keeps you going forward?
It's a really good question. And I think that there's a couple of answers. And thank you, because that also feels like a nice compliment.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. No, you deserve it.
I am a one-man band, and it is a lot easier for a one-man band to move around the stadium than it is for a 100-piece marching band to move around the stadium.
Something to be said. Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So, a canoe moves easier and than a tanker ship. And so even though I have a company of actors it's about 20, 25 people, actors and designers who are in my company, I'm the one making all the decisions. I'm the one who's spearheading every project. I choose all the plays for the most part. I mean, the directors have some say. Occasionally, depends on, sometimes I choose a play and I ask a director, and sometimes a director comes to me with a play. But for the most part, I make all the decisions. And that means that I get to move at whatever speed I want to move at. And so there's that. For a long time, we were resident at a theater called the Spoon Theater, which unfortunately no longer exists.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other change that's happened, is that you've seen places come and go.
Oh, man, I've lost so many venues.
Yeah. I mean, the landscape in New York is changing so rapidly.
Of course, venues get more and more expensive every day. We have, at one point, there was one season we did 3 shows. We were doing 2 shows a season for several years, especially when we were at the Spoon, because we always knew where we were going to be. We knew what the layout of the theater was. We could do so much in advance because we knew exactly what to expect. When we lost that, we became a little less structured, a little more fluid, I guess, a little more like gypsies. And we've been sort of floating from venue to venue since. In the last 4 years, I guess, we have not done a traditional 2-show season every year. 1 year, we were able to move a production to an off-Broadway contract. That meant that we didn't do a second show that season. Then because we had done that, we had raised a lot of money to do that. I said, we're only going to do 1 show next year to make up for the fact that we're not going to be able to raise money right away. Like it's going to...
You kind of tapped out your resource there, yeah.
Exactly. So we only did 1 show the following year. And then we did 2 shows the next year after that. And then last year I said, I'm only doing 1 show. Like I need a little time. And we did a big gala to celebrate our anniversary. And then we did the one really big show. And now this year, we're probably only doing 1 show. I mean, never say never, but I'm like 85% sure we're only going to do 1 show this year. And that's because I get to say I only want to produce 1 show this year.
Right. You have the agility to be able to say that.
Exactly,
yeah.
because I'm one person. I'm a one-man band.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. That I'm able to be flexible because I'm only one person and I don't have to answer. We're not incorporated. We don't have a board. I don't have to answer to anybody. I don't have co-founders or co-directors who are a committee and everything's chosen by committee. Like none of that applies here.
Right.
Those are wonderful things that there are times when I wish I had that because I could turn to someone and say, I need help.
Yeah.
They would be there to help me.
Right.
And I don't always have that. For the first time 2 shows ago, I had a co-producer. I had an assistant producer on the last show, and on this coming up show, I have a co-producer. We call it associate producer. It means the same thing, but it's a nicer title. Co-producer, so...
Sounds good.
It just, whatever. But yeah, so I'm starting to have more help. But I did it all myself up until that point. So, and when we moved the show to the off-Broadway contract, there was another company involved too. So that took some of the burden. But
sure.
But not so much of the burden that I felt we could forego, or that I felt we could continue to fundraise and do everything.
Yeah.
It just was too much.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. Part of it's my passion, my personal passion, and I don't feel like I'm done yet, and I feel like there are still stories to be told. And I think that it's sort of funny that I think after 10 years, I'm almost finding more. Something happened to me let's say 2 years ago. A playwright, Christy Perfetti Williams. You know,
yes,
wonderful woman.
Yes,
came to me. It was actually 2.5 years ago or something, and said, "I want to write for Retro. I want to write you a play." And my first response to her was, because I know her work, and I know her work is wonderful, but it's all very personal. It's all very modern, contemporary. It's all I said.
It doesn't quite fit the retro model.
I was like, okay, I'm listening, but what would you write about? because we're retro. You have to stay within the mission statement.
Sure.
And so this like year and a half long conversation happened, which was, I don't know, I just want to write for you. Well, no, that you can't. Okay, well, it's got to be retro. Okay, well, what does retro mean? Okay, well, this is what retro means, and and I was like, you could choose anything really, but is there a particular part of history that interests you? Maybe that's how you go about it, and maybe this, that, and the other thing. And it was it was like 2 years ago was the 60th. No, that's not quite right. The math isn't adding up. But there was this amazing documentary on TV that had been made for the 60th anniversary. It was probably had been around for a while. But I was watching this documentary. It was made for the anniversary of the Freedom Rides.
Okay.
And it was on American Experience, PBS documentary. And it was an amazing documentary. And I was fascinated immediately and also appalled that I knew nothing about the Freedom Rides. And I didn't, and although I remembered studying the civil rights movement, I just somehow don't know how the Freedom Rides weren't part of that. In his, I was also a surprisingly bad student of history in high school, which is amazing because I actually really love it now.
Yeah, and what they teach you in school about history is very narrow view of what actually happened. So
yeah,
it might have
at least it was when we were in school.
Yeah, you might have been sick that day. Maybe you went to the bathroom while they were talking about it for those 15 minutes they covered it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we were, she and I were, like texting back and forth, and I said, for example, I'm watching this amazing documentary right now about the Freedom Rides. Maybe that would inspire you. And she said, what channel, please? And I said, it's PBS. So we started watching it from our respective homes, and we were texting back and forth. And I said, imagine the play that takes place in that bus. Imagine the play that takes place in that bus station. And so we're having this back and forth, and there was an interview with a Freedom Rider, and she said that she told the story about how she'd been in jail and the sheriff had taken her out of the jail and put her in the back of his car along with a couple of other of the Freedom Riders and driven her out into the middle of nowhere. They didn't know where they were. They dropped him in the middle of the night on the side of the road. Told him to walk. Said, you go that direction, you'll be fine, but you come back in, you'll go to jail for a very long time. So they started to walk and they came across a farmhouse and they knocked on the door and the man did not want to let them in. And she says, in the documentary, but my mama always told me if I was ever in trouble, I should appeal to the woman in the house. And that's what we did. And that woman saved our lives. Because the woman insisted that the man open the door.
Wow.
Just babies, you got to get them in this house. And that was the entirety of the thing, of what was said about that moment in history on that documentary. But I said to Christy, imagine the play that takes place in that house.
Yeah.
And she did. And it was amazing. And of course, what we found out later about that moment in history is that it's very different from the play that she imagined, including the races of some of the characters involved.
Oh, okay.
So what she wrote is very fictional, but it was inspired by that little tiny blip in that documentary. And she wrote this incredible play called An Appeal to the Woman of the House. And when we workshopped it for a year and we produced it a year ago last May. And something about working on that play and the importance of the subject matter changed me. And yes, we did do a light, fluffy 1920s Kaufman comedy last year.
Yeah.
But before Appeal, we did the Baltimore Waltz, which is an AIDS play, and then we did Appeal, and then we did the Kaufman comedy. But we did some work with Red Nose Day, which is a philanthropy for children's charities.
Right.
And during Baltimore Waltz, we raised money for Broadway Cares, and then we did this very lovely play that Christy wrote that was about the civil rights movement. And it's not really about the civil rights movement. It's actually really about how a grand gesture creates waves, and it's those waves, those ripples that affect those are what push things forward. It's the small gestures that actually have more meaning ultimately. And so this thing has happened to me where I suddenly want to choose plays that feel more important. Suddenly.
Sure.
And the next show we're doing is Good Boys and True by Roberto Aguirre-Sacasa. I hope I'm saying his name right. And it is about a sex scandal in a prep school. Which anybody who's been watching the news in the last couple of months knows is very timely. And I don't know what'll happen next, but I think that most of the shows we've done in the last 10 years have felt, worth doing on some level.
Sure.
They've all been worth doing. I don't think I've done anything
level.
that didn't feel worth doing.
Right.
But certainly some of them have had some tie-ins. And doing Still Life when we did it 8 years ago, which is a play about a Vietnam vet and his trying to sort of reconnect in the world after coming back, felt very timely and important when we did it when soldiers were coming back from Iraq. And and then and we've done some other things too that that sort of end up building up towards sort of this feeling like I want to do things that connect that way. And I am not done with an appeal to the woman of the house by any stretch of the imagination. The character that Christy wrote me, Rose Walker, she's not gone. I'm not done with her. I have more work to do with her. And Delisa White, who directed that, and Christy both feel that way too. And we are actually hoping to put it on a bigger screen somewhere down the line.
A screen.
A screen somewhere down the line.
Yes.
And that is something we're working towards. There's a draft of a screenplay. It's not, it's not finished. We're not there yet. It's very early in the process.
But it's giving life to something, new life to something that is important. And it does have relevance and it does have resonance. And that's the kind of stuff that I think we all really want on some level. Yeah. Whether you're doing the craziest of comedy or the most serious of drama, I think what you want is to feel that what you do impacts somebody in some way. Absolutely. So that they walk away feeling something that they didn't necessarily feel before that thing started.
Right. And the play that we're doing, Good Boys and True, that actually is coming up, and Delisa White is also directing this, is one of the things I love about this play is not just that it's another rape culture play. It is actually more than that. It's about a boy who takes advantage of a girl in 1988, and it's captured on videotape. But one of the main characters is his mother, and for me, the reason the play is important and the reason I want to do the play so badly is because the mother comes to realizations about her own culpability in the culture that has created the situation with her son. And if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for the mother looking back on her own life and saying, I have done things that I should have done things differently, or I should have not done this, or I should have said something then, or whatever, I don't know that the play would be nearly as interesting or feel as important as it does.
Sure. It's like that ripple effect that you were talking about before.
Exactly.
One thing that's interesting, and I think it's very important for everybody to consider doing, is that Retro offers you the opportunity to act in roles that you want to act in and on your terms.
Yep.
And you're not subject to the whims of casting directors and producers and people who make all those decisions. And I think that's a very smart thing for you to do, to exercise your own acting muscles, to have the work that you want to do sitting right there for you, and all the work that you put into it, you deserve to be able to do that.
One of my, yes, I told you the story about the light bulb moment, but honestly, I always felt like the work I was getting just wasn't worthy. It wasn't that good. I was working, I did a lot of new work that wasn't ready for production, but people were putting money into it because they wanted to see it on stage, and it should have been workshopped for, a couple months at least before, or I did bad Shakespeare, and God knows there are a lot of bad Shakespeare in New York City. And, and I just, I didn't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
I wanted to work on one of the reasons I started, the way I the way that it all kind of fell out was because I wanted to work on established scripts again. Having done so much new work that just simply wasn't ready for production, in my view. Now, that's my opinion, and I'm sure that there are people who don't share that opinion or didn't at the time, people who are involved. But I think it's really important, if you're going to do new work, that you make sure you cross the T's and dot the I's and work out the math problems and make sure that you haven't left a big gaping hole in the middle of your script.
Yes, 100%.
And a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
I go to the theater all the time, and I see a lot of stuff, and sometimes I see new plays that really should have been workshopped a little further.
Yeah.
And it's still, that will always be, and I'll probably end up in some of them at some point. It's not that I'm immune.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's so important, and it's really good for actor. And I think, I don't know. I assume that people feel this way too. Other actors feel this way too. I feel it's very important for an actor to work on established scripts and in different styles. To keep those tools sharp, because it's a different toolbox. If you're working with a playwright in the room and the line doesn't fall trippingly off the tongue, the playwright might just change it for you. But if the playwright's not in the room, you have to make it work.
Right.
And someone else was able to make it work, so because it ended up in the final. Right. So, I think I think one of the reasons we had such an amazing cast for Butter and Egg Man is that actors looked at that casting call or the invitation to audition and went, Kaufman? I get to work on Kaufman? When does that happen? Because honestly, outside of the every other year community theater production of You Can't Take It With You, if you're lucky enough to audition for the Broadway production that just happened,
that's a different story there.
It doesn't happen a lot very much, especially not in indie theater, because it's so big. It's, we did a bare bones version of it, but it's even bare bones. It was really big.
Well, 14 people in a cast for an independent production. That right there tells you that it's not it's no small feat to get that up on its feet. Yes. So here's my big question for you. With Retro, you are the founder and the artistic director, and you are the producer of all these shows, and you take the responsibility of taking key parts in the productions themselves. My question to you is, moving forward, if someone said to you, you know what, we value your work as an actor so much that we just want you to focus on that, and that's all you do from here on out, would you be happy?
Well, yeah.
That's a great answer.
Are you kidding?
So you'd be okay letting go of all that other stuff?
I'm not a producer because I want to be a producer. I'm a producer because I was simply unhappy with what I was being offered as an actor. It's not out of some great desire to be a producer.
It just seems like so much part of it. It seems like it's part of your DNA.
So this year I did 3 shows back to back from January to May, that overlapping, no less. And only one of them was one I produced. And it was a joy to just be an actor in someone else's project. Were there times when I watched something happen and thought, I wouldn't do it that way?
Right.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course there were.
Yeah.
But I'm not the producer here. I'm going to kick back, put my heels up. It's not my problem.
Well, good for you.
I don't know. I could definitely just, be an actor. I would love that. And I would love to forego the day job, which I very much need at this time financially. I haven't been able to be the kind of actor who goes on auditions in a very long time.
Yeah.
I financially can't afford to. I simply can't.
Well, it's very rare that anybody can do that.
Yeah. I can't. I'm in partially jealous of people who can. And also, it's actually the part of being an actor I like the least. I'm a little bit lazy. I like to say I'm a lazy actor. I don't really like to audition.
I don't think anybody listening to this believes that for half a second.
And that's the thing. I said, it's easier for me to produce my own show than to go on an audition.
Well, if it works for you, it works for you.
But it's not, I like to pretend that it's being lazy, but it's not actually being lazy, obviously.
Well,
obviously it's a lot of work.
It's a bit of humility from you, which is also very good to hear. And it's very refreshing to know that despite all the stuff you're doing, you remain humble, which is great. So how do people keep in touch with you and the production company and all that stuff?
Okay, well, I have a website, heathercunningham.net. Retro Productions has a website, retroproductions.org. You can sign up for e-blasts on that website to be on the mailing list. We also have a Twitter at RetroProdsNYC. And of course, we're on Facebook, Retro Productions Theater Company on Facebook. And we are going to have our next production, Good Boys and True, opens November 28th.
Oh, it's coming up soon.
It's pretty soon. We start rehearsal November 2nd. Opening night is the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I'm pretty sure that's the 28th.
That's not a bad day.
Yeah. And then we run until December 12th, and we'll be at the Gene Frankel Theater.
Retroproductions.org for all of that information.
Exactly.
Thanks very much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That's Heather Cunningham. Great conversation. And she is an example of what happens when you take inspiration and motivation and a sprinkling of I'm sick of all of this garbage I'm doing right now, funneling it in a positive direction and creating something great. So kudos to Heather and to Retro Productions and everyone involved in that for keeping that thing alive for the last 10 years plus. I'm a big fan. If you want to keep in touch with them, if you want to be part of it, if you want to reach out to Heather, you can find her online. She's got her own website, heathercunningham.net, but Retro Productions can be found online at retroproductions.org, and they have a Twitter you can follow at RetroProdsNYC. Now, I will have links to that on the website in the show notes for this episode. Good Boys and True, that opens Saturday, November 28th at the Gene Frankel Theater in New York City. You can go check that out, and information is available at the Retro Productions site. Thanks, Heather, for providing the space, by the way, and being cool, and for all the hard work you put into all this stuff, because you give opportunities to a lot of people, and you should be proud of everything you have accomplished. All right, that about does it for another edition of Bring Your Own Lunch. Glad you can join us. Thank you, and thank Banuba. Banuba.net, BANOOBA.net. What's Banuba? Well, they're the band you're listening to right now. They're awesome. Go to their website, buy their music, download their music, go see them live. Tell them Dave says hi. And don't forget to go to our website, bringyourownlunch.com. You can find out all the information about Heather and all the links I mentioned. You can find out all the information about all the guests in the past and the present and presumably the future. That's where you can find a way to email me directly, Dave at bringyourownlunch.com. You can like us on Facebook.com/bringyourownlunch. Follow us on Twitter at BYOL Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Bring Your Own Lunch. And please, 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 if you can, take a moment, go to iTunes or Stitcher and rate and review and subscribe to Bring Your Own Lunch. It helps us out so much. You wouldn't believe it. And hashtag BYOL. Stay tuned for Jimmy Jack's Cow Punch Hour, followed by Mansoor and the Fish. And until next week, when I'll have another great guest lined up, this is Dave. I'll see you next week. Ben Carson is the worst.